everyone, welcome to Homeschool Autism Life. My name is Jamie. I am outside in the glorious, mostly fall. The leaves are just starting to turn, and yeah, it's nice. It's not too hot, it's not too cold, so I'm going to try and do this video outside. I've tried before, and sometimes it's an utter failure, and then other times it works, so we're hoping. So today's video, or this week's video, I wanted to speak to guardianship and the beginning of the process. So in an earlier video, I spoke about actually starting that process, and I can't speak to very specifics because unless you live in Alberta, and feel free to send me a message if you are in Alberta, Canada, because then I will speak to very specifics. But I know depending on what country you're in, what state or province you're in, these rules and the ideas can vary drastically. So I'm going to speak in more generalizations at this point, just because I know that it's not the same everywhere. Some of the frustrations that I've had regarding guardianship and the process of is there's not a list available to tell us these are the paperwork, this is the paperwork that you're going to need, all of the paperwork, this is the list, and you're going to need to talk to this person and that person, and you're going to have a lawyer. Like, none of those things are actually listed out. And I've been in the autism world since my son was 7, and he's 16 now. So that's a huge issue, I think, to a lot of parents when they're talking about looking at their child and going, I don't know if he's going to be very independent. At this point, I can say that my son still needs our help. Not that he couldn't do it himself, but he has no desire to do things like get dressed in the morning. It's something that I still have to start. I need to feed him. He could cook his own very straightforward, simple meal, but again, there's no desire to do that. And so there's a few things that I recognize at this point as his mom that maybe he will do it soon. I don't know. But at this particular juncture, I need to prepare for the future that I am dealing with right now. And if he ends up doing some of these things, awesome. But I know at this point, chances are he's not managing his own money. At this point, he's not going to be independent enough to have his own job and own his or rent his own house or drive a car, like all of these things that are pretty well needed when they turn 18 to be able to say, yeah, this is going to be them, right? If it happens, and I still pray that there's a certain amount of independence that he wants for himself, but I also recognize that I need to prepare for the future that I see right now. So the issue that I have is that list should be readily available. The second thing that I have been frustrated by is the understanding that we can't put any paperwork through until after he turns 18, which I think is completely cray-cray. The reason why is because as soon as our child turns 18, the government considers him an adult. So he can make his own decisions and he can go to the doctor without a parent. We won't be allowed in the room with him, which is, again, completely crazy. There's a bunch of different things that I go, okay, well, you should be allowed to deal with these issues and situations a little bit earlier than the second they turn 18. So with those frustration in mind, I wanted to share a couple of things that we did when he turned about 16 and a half. Excuse me. When he turned 16 and a half, we were like, we need to go talk to somebody who knows anything about this. And we talked to our pediatrician, who set us up with a social worker. Now, the social worker I was quite nervous about it because I've heard lots of different stories from different folks online who have had to deal with this ahead of time. And so I had a lot of nerves going into it, and she did calm a lot of those nerves. So one of the things that she did say, and it was so funny because even she were like, we just want a list of all the paperwork that we're going to need. And she was sitting there going, okay, what, like, even she was like, what, I need to go through websites, and she's looking through and she finds a bunch of the websites, but it wasn't like, even in her mind, it wasn't like, oh, here's the list, which again, I'm like so amazed that that's the case. But she was helpful in the fact that she did show us websites I had never even heard of. No clue, no idea. Um, I had heard some of the acronyms for like PDD. Yeah, again, acronyms were everywhere. Uh, AISH is something that is in Alberta, Canada, which is welfare essentially for a child or an adult who cannot take care of themselves, cannot have a job. So I had known some of these things, but not nearly as many as she was pulling out. And she was like literally showing us some of these pages and then printing off a sheet or two so that we could print off the 22 page. Like, it was just, it's crazy to me that that is not just a package readily available. Like, to me, that's crazy. But if you know anything about me or you've watched some of my videos, you know that I am not a last minute Nancy. And so I really, 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 sorry if your name is Nancy. That's there's no slight on you. It was just, that's kind of how not the name, but like people who are last minute, even if it's homeschool, whether it's any sort of thing in life, I need to prepare ahead of time or my brain just goes, pachoo. So the big thing that I wanted to encourage you about is go find that person. Go find that person earlier rather than later. You can't put that paperwork in until they're 18. And I think that this was even down in Florida. They couldn't do it until they were 18. Sorry, bug flying. They couldn't do it until they were 18. And so I think that that's broadly the way it is across North America. I have no idea how it is across overseas, but I sit there and I go, just because you can't put those pages in or that paperwork in until they're 18, don't wait until they're 18 to figure out what paperwork you need. Because if you can put that package together ahead of time, and then as soon as they turn 18, you've put that paperwork in, that's going to shorten that window between the gap between them being an adult according to the government and them needing care and guardianship and protection for their money and all of that. You want that window to be as small as humanly possible. The fact that maybe they won't get sick in that window so you don't have to deal with the doctor situation. I really want to make sure that that's as small as humanly possible. So that was the one big thing. The other thing that I wanted to share is it's even more important to do that if you have a more complicated situation. So my husband and I and our family is a pretty secure unit. And so the social worker, she had actually said our situation is pretty simplistic. We're both in agreement about the fact that he's probably going to need care. There's not that we're not fighting over who's going to manage the money or where that child's going to live. None of that is a situation in our household. But I know that there are situations where maybe your child has more difficulties in daily life, and therefore you're thinking of a group home for your child. Or you have like a lot of families with special needs, divorce in the situation. So your spouse or your ex-spouse and you are struggling to figure out who's going to take on the responsibility or who's going to be in charge of the money. Those are situations, again, that you want to have those discussions with your family. Maybe, oh yeah, maybe there's care with a grandparent or an uncle or an aunt that makes it more complicated. All of those things need to be discussed. You guys work it out together so that when the time comes, and hopefully you're coming from a place of making sure your child is in the best possible place. But if it's not, then again, you need to be on like the bandwagon as soon as possible so that your brain does not explode, but also that those fights are taken care of ahead of the time that they're 18. Now, all of this is to say, in a perfect world, this is what it's going to look like. I don't know what it's going to look like in the future, but all I know is that I can prepare for and be ready for anything and everything. And that's the position that I'm coming from. My hope with this video is just to share the beginning stages. We've talked to the social worker. We have some pages. The next step is going to be filling out paperwork when he turns 17. And with our social worker, she said that I can send that paperwork to her when I start filling it out, and then making, like, she will read it over and fill it out with us if there's things that we need to fix or change. And those are things that can be so helpful, so great, because you can go, okay, I only have to file it once. I don't have to file it 10 times. So if you can find that person that can help you walk the process through, so worth it. So I hope that this has been a helpful video. I just wanted to start that off. So thank you so much for your time. We'll talk to you later. Bye.